What's going on, YouTube? Hey, alright, I'm out here, I'm walking my dog. See, there's Chewy. There's Chewy. Right there. He's getting so big. Okay. Sorry about that. My neighbor was asking about my dog, so here I am. So I'm going to set this up right here, just like so, and sit here and talk to you a little bit. See if we can crank up the volume, pump up the volume, dance. Bah! Okay, so I think that might be a little too much. Turn it down a little bit. There you go. All right. Anyway, I was watching this other YouTube video, and this guy was interviewing a guy that says that he's going to be running for president in 2020. And he says he's going to be running for not president, as he says. Okay. He has a bus that he calls the No Force One or something. Okay. And I'm not going to go into where I've seen it and all that stuff, because I don't want to do go too much into drawing attention from other YouTube channels to my channel, because I'm just talking about it. But the guy says that what he wants to do if he won the election was to dissolve the federal government and then resign, and turn local governments into even smaller governments that were purely volunteer based and all this good stuff. And that if your little community didn't want guns in the community, then you could vote in your community. Let me tell you what he's wanting to do. Okay, he's wanting to create city states. Okay, any of you that have ever done any research throughout history, this is going to be a lengthy video, just a FYI, but any of you that have ever done any research about history or read about, real history, you know that the Romans and Greeks and several other great civilizations in history, okay, that no longer exist. We're talking about civilizations that no longer exist. Were what you call true democracies. Now, not all of them. Romans actually started out as a republic, and then they, over time, kind of became this democracy. So let's go a little bit into the different types of governments that are out there, and then we'll talk a little more about what this guy was talking about, okay? So you have monarchies and anarchy. Monarchy and oligarchies. Then you have democracies, and they kind of go in this order: monarchy, oligarchy, democracy, republic, and anarchy. Those are your 5 basic forms of government, and all other forms of government will fall in one of these 5 forms of government. Okay, so let's go through those individually. First, you have monarchy. ruled by one. Now, very seldom throughout history has this truly been the case. Even your typical monarchs usually had people, advisors and things that talked to them and that they got a lot of information from to help them make decisions. Okay? And when more than one person are typically ruling, it becomes what? An oligarchy. Okay, so an oligarchy is a bunch of people. Think of the Knights of the Round Table. Okay? Wait a minute. Wasn't King Arthur a monarch? Well, yes, he was, but think of the Knights of the Round Table. Now you're seeing those are actually one and the same for the most part. Okay, oligarchy and monarchy. There have been a few true monarchs, but very, very few. Okay, and you have to go even further back in history because once civilization started getting large enough that they needed help controlling the people, they really kind of became oligarchies. Okay? Now, true oligarchies fall more to like modern England. Okay? Ruled by many. They have a parliament. Yes, they have a queen, but they have a parliament. So they're truly not a monarchy anymore. The queen really just kind of is a figurehead for the country. Okay, and this is no offense to, if England is actually different, you can tell me otherwise, but that's pretty much what it is. Okay, it is a democratic oligarchy is kind of what it is. Okay. Then you have democracy, a true democracy, which we don't see very often, is all the power is given to the people. Okay, so in other words, rules, laws, everything is given to the people to decide. And typically simple majorities. So if there's 100 people, you have 51 people that vote one way, they won the vote. And then that becomes law in essence. Okay? Doesn't work very well. Typically, if you go look throughout all the democracies that have ever occurred in history, what you will find is 100 years. That's the basic rule of it. That's how long it's going to last, is about 100 years on a true democracy. Then you have republics. Now, the name, let's go back to democracy for one more second. The name democracy actually comes from ruled by people. Okay, that was an old Latin term or whatever, and I may not be saying that exactly right, but it's ruled by many or ruled by the people or whatever. Okay, whereas republic actually means ruled by an item. And when you're talking about this, you're talking about the law. Okay? So republic means ruled by law. Okay? Now, in the comments of this other guy's video, I had said, look, this guy ain't going to work. And his ideas ain't going to work in this country. Okay? But we'll get there in a second. Finally, the last one. Oh, well, back to republic. Yeah, so it's ruled by law. So basically, the law is what happens, and you can only do things within that law. So, uh, let's give you a good example of democracy versus republic. Okay? In a democracy, let's say you live on a street that's got, 20 houses on it. Okay? And your 19 neighbors come to your front yard and they want your house. Well, they can hold a vote in your front yard so you see it. And if, more than half of them, okay, if 10 of those neighbors say, yes, we want this guy's house, guess what? They can drive you right out of your house, and there you go. You're done. Okay. In a republic, those 19 neighbors can come in your front yard, and they can try to do that. But then the sheriff or the local police officer shows up and says, nah, this is against the law. You can't do this. And so they can't drive you out because of the law. Okay? So that's the difference between a republic and a democracy. A democracy, they can do that. A republic, they can't. Okay? That's why we are a republic. We are what's called a democratic republic. Okay? Because the people do have a mild say-so in some of the things that occur. Okay? But only the things that fit within the law. Okay? The final one is anarchy. Okay? So now we've narrowed them actually down to 4 different types because we determined that monarchy and oligarchy are pretty much the same thing. Okay? The people have no say-so in anything. Okay? Throughout history, guess who falls under that category? Nazis in Germany. Stalin in Russia. And every other communistic, Naziistic country that's ever been devised around the world. So whenever they say that the political spectrum is laid out this certain way, and then over here on the right you have Nazis, and over here on the left you have communism, it's incorrect. Okay? It is incorrect, and you're skewing the actual political spectrum because I just laid out how the real political spectrum lies. Okay? And then way over here, you have anarchy. Now, most of us know what anarchy is, but here's the thing. Anarchy is always temporary. Anarchy is not a permanent form of government. So now we've narrowed it down to 3 forms of permanent governments. Monarchy / oligarchy, that's one. Democracy and republic. Those are the 3. Okay? Because oligarchy was absorbed by monarchy. They're kind of one thing. Anarchy is temporary. So it never lasts more than, I think the longest anarchy is like 2 years or something like that. I have to go back and look it up, but it wasn't very long. Okay? It's always a temporary form of government. And here's how that occurs. Here's how it's happened in past with people like Rome, the Roman Empire, Greek Empire, things like that. what they do is, okay, Rome is a great example because it actually started out as a republic. Okay. So they have this great amount of freedom, not too much, all that much different from what America. Okay, they had this tremendous amount of freedom. Okay, and they flourished, and they were a great civilization, and they were coming up with new technology and everything else, and they were it was spreading across the globe. Okay, and the people forgot what it was like to have that responsibility of a great republic. And they allowed the politicians of that time to start taking away their rights that were given to them under their constitution. They had like a constitution, okay? And so the people fought to try to get that back, but they took it the wrong way, and they went to a democracy, okay? They shifted from a republic to a democracy because the people forgot. Okay? At this point in time, once they had forgotten and they shifted everything to a democracy, they could never agree on what they wanted to do, and you had these skirmishes from clan to clan, so on and so forth. From city-state to city-state, okay? And eventually, it created anarchy, okay? And from that, the people turned back to the very people that were creating the anarchy. More than likely, it was probably, and this is a good situation. Let me, here, I'll give you a proposal here. Okay, so that same situation I was talking about earlier where your neighbors all come under a democracy and they vote you out of your house. Well, let's say that's happening in just about every neighborhood across the country, okay? We're talking millions and millions of people that are being kicked out of their homes and sent on their own merry way, okay? That are angry about the situation, about what the country had become. Okay? So they start rioting, and I'm not talking about any kind of rioting that you would see, you know, on CNN or whatever here. We're talking about like what's going on in Venezuela, in places like that, where it's just, I mean, it's total mayhem everywhere you go, that people are just like, you know what, forget this, I've had enough. And so they're destroying everything, okay? And they create anarchy. Now these are the very people that were wronged in the beginning by people taking away their homes, that are creating now another wrong. They're creating this anarchy. Well, then what happens? All these other people that were the people that took these people's homes are turning back to those people that are creating the anarchy, going, okay, wait, we've had enough of this. How do you propose to fix it? And so those people come back and they go, well, here's how you fix it. And they propose an idea of a different form of government. It may be monarchy, it may be oligarchy, it may be a republic. This is why democracy doesn't really work. It is a long-term form of government, but it's never been really done properly. Okay? And I don't know if it can be done properly because human beings are not morally responsible. There can be no greed in a democracy. Okay? There can be no hatred in a democracy. You have to be morally responsible. Every single person has to be morally responsible under a democracy. And there ain't such a person. There's only been one to ever live on this earth, and his name was Jesus Christ. Okay? That's why a true democracy cannot work. Well, that's what this guy's kind of talking about. He's talking about going back to city-states and having these small local governments that are built by volunteers and doing away with our armed forces. Hang on, wait, let's think about that. Just on that principle alone. Okay? Yes, in this country, we the people are the militia. And yes, the reason why Japan didn't invade the mainland per their own ruler at the time, okay, was because he feared a gun hiding behind every blade of grass. And he is completely correct. There is and there was. Okay? However, that fear that he had is because we have a great military, and those guns can be used to help our military. If we've got 1 million guns across this country, and there's more than that, I mean, but if we've got a gun behind every blade of grass, okay, but it's not organized, it ain't gonna help. Okay. What the military actually does is help us organize. Okay, the military fights the main part of the fight. Okay, but if it ever came here, not only would we have them, but we'd have people like me and you helping the military get through and fight off the bad guys, if you will. Okay? If you eliminated the military, you would have a bunch of guys running around, guys and girls, running around out there with guns in their hands, not knowing what to do. Where do I go? Who do I fight? Who do I shoot at? You know, who knows? Okay? So just on that perspective, it doesn't sound right. Okay? But then you throw in the whole city-state thing and the true democracy type view. Okay? And things get real messed up. Okay? And I could see this country flying a different flag in a matter of a very short period of time. 10, 15 years. Because we wouldn't have the structure that is needed in this country for this country to survive and defend itself against other countries. I understand when people sit there and they say, oh, well, yeah, but this whole globalist mentality. Oh, no, you're exactly right. It's a horrible mentality. But we're not the only ones that have that mentality. China's got that mentality. England's got that mentality. Don't think for 1 second that if England felt that we were weaker than they were, that they wouldn't come in here and try to take us over. As they've already done twice before. Okay? We fought them off. in 1776, and we fought them off again in the War of 1812. Don't forget that. Okay? In fact, the War of 1812 is where our national anthem comes from. Yeah, it's not 1776, it's 1812. Okay? Actually, to be specific, it happened, I think, in 1813 is when Francis Scott Key was actually on the ship watching as our flag was being bombarded and remained standing only because men in men in uniform fighting, trying to keep this country together, were running up and holding that flagpole up physically themselves to keep it from falling over. And every time one died, somebody replaced him. Okay? Yes, that actually happened. That's what the national anthem is about. Okay? So this, I felt strongly enough about this when I saw this. And there's enough people out there that for some reason they don't get it. I don't know if they just don't have enough foresight as to what our forefathers were actually intending, or if they think that this country's an experiment. It's not an experiment. You know, for people to think that our forefathers put no research, no time, and no devotion into trying to come up with a great form of government, well, I'm sorry. You are wrong. In fact, why don't you do this? Any of you naysayers out there that think that our forefathers just threw together a document and put it on the table, why don't you do this? I want you to do. Hang on, I'm adding it up. 13 years. 13 years of research and debate with other people. 13 years. Day in and day out. That's all you do for 13 years. Is talk about different forms of government. Research historically different forms of government before you make a decision. You have to do it for 13 years. Because, yeah, we won our independence originally in 1776. Okay? Guess what? 1789. Remember that date? That's 13 years later. That's the date the Constitution actually was voted into law. That's when our forefathers actually decided, yes, we have it. This is it. This is our form of government. And all the way to the end, they didn't know for sure. All the way right up to the end, they didn't have a definitive idea of what they were going to do. In fact, when they came out, they asked Benjamin Franklin, well, what do we have? And Benjamin Franklin said, and a lady asked him that, and said, ma'am, we have given you a republic if you can keep it. Now, what this guy is talking about over there is not keeping it. So when I hear people in this country, and I don't care what side of the aisle, all three sides, I don't care. There's technically three sides, okay? Technically. Okay, you have the Republican, the Democrat, and the Libertarian. Okay? And I don't care which one of those three sides, if you are talking about destroying what our forefathers built under the Constitution of the United States, under the Declaration of Independence, there's no way that me or the vast majority of this country, okay, are going to support you. I know I'm not, and I'm not going to speak for everybody else, but I will tell you, I think that all three of those aisles, Republican, Democrat, and Libertarian, I think the vast majority of the nation, I can tell you right now, I personally know, in my own family, I have Democrats, I have Republicans, and I have Libertarians, or at least people that say they identify as Libertarian. Okay? And let me tell you something. When I tell them about this guy and what he's talking about doing, he says, let me put it this way. I have a son that's in high school. And I said, hey, this is what this guy's talking about doing. Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, and I didn't even say city states. I just told him specifically, almost word for word, what this guy had said. And he goes, so he wants to create city states again? He goes, don't he know that didn't work in Rome and in Greece? And I said, I guess not. But, I kind of find it laughable. I can understand and I can grasp the mentality of what you might call the left. And I can understand and grasp the mentality of what you call the right. And I can understand and grasp some of the libertarian point of views. Okay? I cannot understand wanting to basically eliminate our federal government. I'm all for minimizing it, making it as small as possible. Okay? But maintaining the things that our Constitution says. President, Congress, courts, these are necessary. I had somebody actually comment on one of my comments saying, oh, what, you think that rules are what help keep people in line? Okay, I'm sorry, people. To me, that's one of the dumbest comments ever. Ever. He tried to accuse me of not thinking it through. Let's take away all laws, all rules. And I'm talking rules. I'm not just, let's just for a second pretend you're driving down the road. Now, forget the laws. Okay, let's shove those over here. Laws are one thing. But rules. There are rules when you're driving, okay? Try to be courteous, try to, this, that, and the other. Now, if nobody followed the rules, if nobody followed the driving rules, do y'all honestly believe that we wouldn't have any problems whatsoever? I mean, even in Germany where there's no speed limit, in certain places of the Autobahn, or in Montana where there's roads with no speed limits. Okay? I think it's Montana or Wyoming, whatever. There's that freeway or highway that has no speed limit. Okay, they still have rules. You can only pass in the left-hand lane. You have to be courteous. You can't be weaving in and out of traffic. Okay, these are still rules that you have to follow. So yes, if you took away all the rules, let me just say this. If there were no rules, you want to talk about being open-minded, thinking outside the box, okay? Imagine this. Get out of your box for a second and imagine no rules whatsoever applied. Okay? No rules. How much do you think crime would increase? I'm going to tell you right now. Crime would increase drastically. Because people are greedy. You want anarchy? Take away all the rules. Basically tell everybody, hey, here's a good example. That movie, there's been several of them. What is it? Something night or something where one day a year or something that they can go out and they can commit any crime and it's forgiven. Okay? And that night, like, the crime rate is like, what would normally be crime is like through the roof. I mean, people are afraid to leave. They try to lock themselves into what you might call safe houses or whatever to try to keep these the criminal elements from, and even some of these people would normally be considered law-abiding citizens. But because there's no rules, they get a chance to go out and hunt other people, basically, and take the things that they want that the other people have, money and cars and blah, blah, blah. And that's what would be happening on a day-to-day basis. I mean, if there were no rules, I could walk over to my neighbor's house, take his house, his cars, his, whatever I want. That ain't right. And I would never do that. I'm not that kind of a person. Okay? But just that thought, that mentality, that things would be pretty much the same if there weren't any rules. Okay? I know this is a long video and I've gone pretty deep. And I am a constitutionalist. And I mean, to the point, whenever I hear laws being proposed about the Second Amendment, even existing laws that are already on the book about the Second Amendment, I believe they're unconstitutional. Okay? Every law that is not a constitutional amendment to the Second Amendment is unconstitutional. That's just the way it is. I feel the same way about the First Amendment. I feel the same way about the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all the way up, all of them. If it's not a constitutional amendment, it is illegal. Okay? Except for, and the forefathers address this, the 10th Amendment. Okay? That things that were not specifically addressed by the Constitution were left to the states. Okay? So all this healthcare law stuff and gun control law stuff and all that stuff, okay, first off, that immediately, the 10th Amendment immediately takes that away from the federal government. And then when you go back and you look at the Ninth Amendment that says that one constitutional amendment cannot override another constitution. It cannot take away the rights of another constitutional amendment. So that means the 10th Amendment, which allows the states to make laws regarding things, cannot override the Second Amendment, for example. This is why any law that is not a constitutional amendment is illegal when it comes to gun control. Yes, we're talking the NFA, the Hughes Amendment, the Brady Bill, the Patriot Act. Doesn't matter. All these new ones they're proposing, they are unconstitutional. And we will get more into that when I go into the Second Amendment in my Constitution series. But I didn't want to get real political on my YouTube channel, and I'm trying not to get too political. That's why I'm trying to keep this historical, and I'm not trying to talk and lean from one party to another party or anything like that. But I am going to call people on unreasonable political motives. Okay? I do not want anarchy. Neither do you. Okay? Yeah, there may be a small crowd of people out there that want anarchy. Or they think they do. But the minute that it happens, they ain't going to want it. Okay? The minute that true anarchy in this country was to take place, they ain't going to want it. In fact, they're going to see to making it either an oligarchy, monarchy, or republic again. So, it doesn't matter. I'm just saying. So, I think that's all I have to say for today. And we're going to get back to some other reviews and things. I've been pretty busy and stuff at work and trying to get some jobs raked in and all that good stuff. So, we'll see you in the funny papers.